the homework here. All right, on the front side, the exponential functions. All right, I'm gonna give you most of these even ones here. All right, go do number 12. All right, 26, 28, 30, 32. So remember what we did there? What makes the exponent 0? What makes the exponent 1? And then the horizontal asymptote. All right.
Graph it.
Yeah, graph them. It says what? Graph it, and then find the domain and range. Now, the directions on these problems on the back side here should be the same, and I didn't copy those. Okay, so you're going to graph them, and then find the domain and range. Now, we need to do a couple of examples of how do we graph a log function. Now, it's going to be very, very similar to an exponential function. The only thing is what we're going to have to do is just do a couple of things first. Okay. Now, so I'm going to look at an example here. I think I'm going to do number 53. Okay.
What are the numbers?
Oh, I'm sorry. Do 54, 56, 58, 60, 62, 64. Now, I'm not going to give you the natural logs. Okay. We'll talk about natural logs one day. We won't do any graphics. Now, let's look at, and let me do number 53. Okay. Now, and let me give you some kind of steps to go by. Now, if you understood how to graph the exponentials, chances are you'll get this one too. Okay. So, first thing you want to do here is you want to isolate the log. So get the logarithm by itself. Now, the log doesn't necessarily mean log in the 2. What's the log here that we're really talking about? It's the x plus 1. Okay, that's the logarithm. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to isolate that. Now, in this case, it's really already by itself. Okay, so what would happen if I had like a 2 out in the front? I would divide by 2 on both sides. Okay, right, I don't have that. Now, if I had like a plus 2 over here, I would subtract 2 from both sides. And what I'm going to do to kind of make this a little bit easier, my next step, instead of calling this g of x, what can I call it? Yeah, just call it y. Okay. Now, you can even write it down as y. Now, so it's already isolated. Now, the next thing, and here comes the crucial step. What you're going to do is you're going to switch it to exponential form. Now, this is what we did at the top of the worksheet. Remember, we take the base raised to what power is equal to the logarithm. Okay. So, what's my base here? 2, and then we're going to raise it to this power, which is y, and it's going to be equal to x plus 1. So we'll have 2 to the y power is equal to x plus 1. So now, what I've done is I've went from a log function to an exponential function. Y'all get where we're going with this? Because if we can get it in an exponential form, we kind of know how to do it, don't we? Now, next thing, before we really start graphing, we're going to solve for x. And that's really not that big of a deal. How would I solve for the x there? And subtract the 1. So it'll be 2 to the y minus 1 equals x. Now, from here on out, okay, step forward, I'm not going to write them all down. Basically, we're just going to graph an exponential. Now, the only thing is it's going to be a little bit backwards. Remember how we graph the exponentials? We say what makes the exponent 0, what makes the exponent 1. The only difference is here is the exponent is not in terms of x, but it's in terms of y. So I'm going to pick y values and get x values. Okay? And now, what's going to happen with my asymptote? Instead of a vertical asymptote, instead of a horizontal asymptote, it's going to be a vertical asymptote. Because things are flipped around. Instead of y equals, it's x equals, which means they are, I'm wrong, inverses. Logarithmic functions and exponential functions are inverses of each other. Okay? Now, so on our t-table, it's just like we did at the very beginning of class, but instead of picking x values, we're going to pick y values that make the exponent 0 and 1. So what would make my exponent 0 and 1 is 0 and 1. Y. Now, let's plug those values in. So let's plug in 0. We get 2 to the 0 power minus 1. Okay. 2 to the 0 power would just be 1, and then 1 minus 1 would be 0. You got the origin. Now, what makes the exponent there 1 would just be 1. Okay, so we would have 2 to the first power minus 1. All right, 2 to the first power would be 2. And 2 minus 1 is 1. Okay, now, what's our sort of, it's not really a vertical shift, but what's like our vertical shift here? The minus 1. Now, instead of being a horizontal asymptote, it's going to be different. It's going to be a vertical asymptote. So we're not going to say y equals negative 1. We're going to say x equals negative 1. Okay? Now, let's graph it. Alright, so we got 0, 0, and then 1, 1.
What is that divided into 9?
Right here. Graph the exponent. So it just goes back to what we started with at the very beginning of the lesson. Okay. Except for everything's kind of turned around.
2 to the 0 power is minus 1.
Is 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. So we plugged in 0, right? 2 to the 0 power is 1, and 1 minus 1 is 0. Now we got the 2 points. Now let's put in the vertical asymptote. X equal negative 1. That's going to be right here. Now, how do we draw a graph with 2 points and an asymptote? It's going to be a curve. It's going to go through the 2 points, and what's it going to do to the asymptote? Chase it, but never touch it. So it kind of should go to that point. I'm going to cheat. That won't really cheat. Never mind. Now, let's take the domain and the range. Now, remember how the domain on the exponentials was all real? Now the range is going to be all real. Okay? And my domain is going to have the restriction. So on my domain, we go from the left to the right. Right? So we don't have any values over here. The domain doesn't start until negative 1, and we don't include it, so we use a parenthesis. So negative 1 to infinity. Right? Now, so does that kind of make sense about how you graph a log one? You just switch it to an exponential form. All right, let's look at one more. Let's do this one real fast. All right. What makes the exponent? Oh, wait a minute. I gotta switch it now. Darn. All right. So. Get that. That's not what I wanted to do. Are y'all good?
Yeah.
Okay. So y'all can graph the exponential and the logarithm? Yes. Yes, you can check. You can check on that line. All your tests and homework things have been great. I'm gonna give them back to you tomorrow with your folder. That's why I'm not giving, because I haven't filed it yet. Yeah.